Welcome to the NdB Sunday Show with me, Chris Steyn, and Lauren Evanthia, the founder of the Organic Humanity Movement. Morning, Lauren.
Morning, Chris. So another interesting week. I know that a lot of people were probably more interested in what was happening in the sport arena, but still the government continues to fail us. So it's important we keep up to date with what's happening.
South Africa is on high alert ahead of the National Shutdown this week. Foreigners are fleeing, and South Africans in the townships are complaining that the people who paid such high rents are also now decamping.
Yes, the 30th of June is looming on us. Just 2 days from now. Hey, is it tomorrow or the next day? I don't even know what date it is. But I think it's absolutely interesting. Tuesday. Thank you. So it's happening on Tuesday. I think it's an interesting case study for where we're at in our democracy. So I think I've expressed my views with regards to the strategy Jacinta is using to address illegal immigration. But I would like to just zoom out just a little bit, because what's more interesting is where we are in our country with regards to our democratic participation. So it seems the people most affected by illegal immigration are the people that are marching naturally. And we had some protest action in Cape Town, miraculously, a small group of 100. And we're obviously expecting across the country much more. The government is their number one fear, I suppose, is instability in terms of localized violence across the country, roads being blocked, that kind of thing. Obviously, it's also going to affect the economy in various ways. So from a government stability perspective, it's a huge crisis. From a government perspective, it is always a crisis, whether that government is a good government or a bad government, when people are mobilizing in anger against what the government is doing, whether justified or not. So from a security standpoint, of course, red flags everywhere. And what I found the most interesting is how many organizations, political and non-political, and how many influential people have spoken against the whole March on March strategy and project, if I may call it that. I actually went and watched Jacinta's most recent public interview. It was over an hour long. And what an interesting woman. She pulled at my heartstrings, because she said the reason she started March on March is due to the 25 deaths of children that happened last year, mainly Gauteng area, when they consumed poisoned or toxic substances from spaza shops run by foreigners who are bringing into the country unregulated products. I remember following that story. I remember reading, heartbrokenly, how a 4-year-old child was in hospital and said to their mother, "I don't want to die." They knew they were dying. There was no cure. I think it turned out that what happened is that they consumed products that had some kind of illegal pesticide that's supposed to get rid of rats. Terrible. So it's the root, and as Jacinta so eloquently puts it, the root of the problem is the illegal foreign trade of goods that shouldn't be in this country. And, lives have been lost. And the fact that March on March was started off the back of that, I think I saw Jacinta and the whole movement in a new light, because we never got answers from the police. Journalists never followed up what happened to those poor children. And isn't that the case with everything that happens in this country? We just don't hear back. We read shocking articles, death, mayhem, and destruction everywhere. We never hear what happens afterwards. So here is a woman that's actually saying, no, the government needs to be held accountable on various levels. And so she's, from a grassroots level, single-handedly raised up a nationwide movement. Are some political and non-profit organizations perhaps a little envious of her ability to do that, because she takes a no-nonsense approach? On the other hand, the danger is, as a single person, single figure-headed movement, she doesn't necessarily control or have power over how people react. So people with ulterior motives can hijack the 30th of March and commit all kinds of crimes. Who knows? Violence and all the rest. So I remember reading Mahatma Gandhi's his biography. a long time ago. And one story always stood out to me, and that is, Mahatma Gandhi, criticized figure, sure, but known for passive resistance, known for peaceful protest. And he had organized this nationwide passive resistance protest thing. And it got out of hand in a specific area. And long story short, someone died as a result. He never advocated for violence, but he couldn't control absolutely every single person that was part of his organized passive resistance protest. And it's the same thing here. So we reached a point when institutions are not strong and when systems start to crumble because of government failure and the lack of ethical leadership. What happens is that society starts to take over, and it takes over in a very chaotic way because we don't have a replacement for government failure on such a large scale. So when that happens, there's too many moving parts that cannot be predicted or controlled. And this is why the state is concerned. And I think this is why a lot of influencers and personalities and organizations are concerned, because everyone just wants life to continue as close to normal as possible. Let the government deal with illegal immigration. But as Jacinta herself so eloquently pointed out in the interview, is that, it's easy to talk when you are coming from a middle-class suburb. When you are neighbors with illegal foreigners, it changes things completely. So I sympathize with both sides. Here's a woman that has stood up and done something. Media's given a coverage, and it's grown to this point where 30th of March will probably be the culminating action that will decide where we go forward as a country after this. What else can we as a citizenry do to mobilize? That is my question. Because we've congregated, or a portion of the population is congregated around illegal immigration, ignoring the fact that we have a police failure, a government failure, etc. What else can we mobilize around, and what can we mobilize around in a more disciplined, structural manner that doesn't necessarily result in the instability of the country? That's what I'm more interested in.
30th of June, by the way. Meanwhile, the African National Congress SG Fikile Mbalula is accusing former President Jacob Zuma of fueling anti-immigrant sentiments.
I think it's just politicking. All of it's just politicking. Because why do we have the problem of illegal foreigners in the country? The government is failing. Who's the government? The GNU is the government right now. So it's basically the ANC and the DA and a few others that are forgotten. And he is the MK. He's the opposite. He's not part of the GNU, one of the few parties that aren't part of the GNU. And so it's just natural that he is going to fuel anything that's opposing the government. So I think Mbalula is just politicking, trying to get attention. What he's blaming Zuma for doing, he's doing himself. Because we know how the MK operates. Zuma's in charge. He's the personality, the big personality. And I think we know how he feels about the ANC as well. Hence, he started the MK. So I think from the broader perspective, it's just politicking. I think it's natural for the opposition of the GNU to fuel this kind of thing. So I'm curious to see where it goes. Like I said, with Zuma's support of Abahambe. It's a interesting part in our country because we haven't seen this level of anti-illegal immigrants before. It's definitely reached a point because there's been groups before, Operation Dudula and others, that have been very vocal against illegal foreigners. And this is probably the biggest fight back. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens and how the government responds. I don't honestly think the government knows what to do except throwing 600 million rand at the problem. And is it enough? And why aren't they putting that money towards actual governing in the first place to prevent situations like this? Which brings me to another random point, but it's on topic, but it's also a broader point that I feel if the ANC government actually, or the GNU even, if every person sitting in government actually just did their job well, they would get the support of the people. And this is the big elephant in the room that no one wants to address. That if the individuals involved in government, if they could just realize, if it could dawn on them that doing their job well would mean continued support for as long as they do their job well, then they don't have to fight so much with the public and politics so much.
In the other big story, the possible impeachment of President Cyril Ramaphosa, the SG has defended the African National Congress Speaker of Parliament for not wanting to oppose the urgent interdict by the president to try and stop his hearing. According to him, there is no conflict of interest and she does not have to recuse herself.
Yes, and constitutionally, she has the right to remain neutral on this as the speaker. And obviously, politics. We're in this country where we have a multi-party system in our constitutional democracy. And that's the main character, the multi-party facet of our system. And I think it's a huge problem in this country. So how is the speaker elected in parliament? People nominate members of parliament forward, and then there's a vote. And obviously, she got the majority. She got almost 300 votes out of the 400 seats. I think the EFF also put someone forward in 2024 in June, and she obviously won. And she was backed by the GNU stakeholders. So that's an interesting one because she does have the right to be neutral. She said, let the courts do their thing, let the process happen, let him do the whole interdict thing. And again, to me, it shows that our constitution is flawed. We have so many problems. We have what we spoke about with March and March. We don't have border control. We don't have a strong police force. We don't have a government that cares about South Africa's sovereignty at all, not even a little bit. And I'd argue, and it goes far as to say that the government does not care about people in any way. Any infrastructure is for business interests, not for human beings. And system change is the heart of all the solutions. Nothing's going to change unless the system changes. So with regards to what's happening with the speaker, it should highlight to people who's following the story that we have a crisis within our political system, that parties have all power and all influence. Those who wrote the Constitution, did they think that a party having a majority wouldn't be an issue? Did they think that, something like the GNU could not happen? Did they think that people would enter parliament not caring about position and power, but caring for the people? I think this is the problem that we have across the world, that these documents are written with rose-tinted glasses. So I think the Constitution of South Africa was written with the euphoria of the Rainbow Nation and everything that happened around 1994. Written naively, written with rose-tinted glasses, expecting the best of humanity and not considering what happens when people have power and when parties prop up those people in power and people can hide behind parties. There's no accountability because of political parties. So the party politics in South Africa is, in my opinion, the number one biggest stumbling block towards our progress as a nation. There are so many things that need fixing, but it starts with fixing the political system of South Africa, removing these stumbling blocks. So an ANC speaker is in charge. Is it not a conflict of interest when the president is also a member of the ANC and also a leader of the country again? And he chooses the commissioners of the Chapter 9 institutions. There are way too many red flags in our constitution that undermine democratic principles and make it impossible to do what a democracy is supposed to do: help citizens hold the government accountable. Political parties tie our hands, and that's a huge problem.
Meanwhile, as more and more worms are crawling out of the police and political capture can, Cat Matlala has cut a deal and turned state witness.
Yes, and he'll serve 7 years instead of 15 allegedly. So that's an interesting one because he's been mentioned in almost every testimony here as this controversial businessman responsible for so much corruption. But do you think that, he's going to say he goes to jail, best case scenario, he goes to jail, exposes some rot in SAPS. Do you think that's really going to fix this rotten government that we have? Do you think it's really going to make our country more sovereign? Do you think it's really going to make our government officials more accountable? We need to fix the tender process. There are things we can do to make it way better than it currently is. No, these commissions of inquiry that keep on happening is just a distraction to the fact that we're not actually going for solutions in this country. Those with power are not implementing solutions. They are wasting your time. They are wasting your money as South African citizens. And it's an insult to our collective intellect. And this is why, March and March is happening on one hand around illegal immigration, but on the other hand, why can't more people be as outraged over government failure? It's like we're used to this toxic relationship that we have with power. And it does make me think that there's something more, I suppose, subconscious happening that we too easily, perhaps because of our cultures, our religions, our backgrounds, as diverse as we are as a nation, I think we have one common denominator. And that is whatever our culture, religion, or whatever is from birth, we are taught to accept authority no matter what. And that is a crisis, because look at what it's resulted in. Look where we are now, just because of the fact that we are taught to accept authority, to respect the government, but they don't respect you. They don't respect me. They don't respect us. And, I honestly don't care if he goes to jail or not. There's going to be more to replace him in terms of just pillaging government coffers. So I see the whole commission really as just a ruse and an excuse for government not to actually implement the solutions that really do matter. What are the solutions? Changing the system through reforming the constitution and putting things in place that are truly democratic, not pretending to be democratic.
The new leader of the Democratic Alliance is already under fire, Hill-Lewis, because Cape Town has lost its clean audit status. And then he has the former leader of the party, John Steenhuisen, very embittered at what he feels was a betrayal by his erstwhile friend.
Of course. I mean, on the latter part, that is awkward because both of them have always been high up in the DA together. So it must be very awkward when your leadership role gets in the way of relationships built. But feelings have to be put aside in organizations, and an organization has to do what's best for the outcome of what they want to achieve, whatever their goal is. So I think Steenhuisen needs to reach a point where he admits that he made a big mistake with regards to the foot and mouth disease. But besides that, with the clean audit in Cape Town, so for the first time, we lost it. According to some news article, it has something to do with procurement technicality. He's appealing it, actually. And I think, as much as I want to criticize the DA government, I want to actually zone in on what the Auditor General said. Something very, very interesting. And that is local governments are doing better while all the metros are doing worse. And I think that speaks to a broader problem that our metro municipalities are too big for one small government to handle. And so to be properly democratic, or to adopt properly democratic principles, decentralization is a very, very important factor. But when areas of government are too large, you're moving away from decentralization. A local government is obviously decentralized form of government, but our metros are not working. Our metros are failing. So the Auditor General doesn't just look at finances, they also look at the ability to implement service delivery, infrastructure, and all the rest as well. It's quite an interesting process. But our metro municipalities are not doing well because they are too populated. And they're not doing anything to stop that. People are just pooling into metros because they are economic hubs. So everyone pulls into metros, me too, me included. I moved from Port Elizabeth to Cape Town many years ago in search of economic opportunity, but Port Elizabeth since has been declared a metro. So people are drawn, it's natural human migration, including with illegal foreigners and citizens. We are drawn to economic hubs in hope of getting some kind of work, in hope of getting work and then climbing the ladder to get better work, because there are less opportunities in smaller municipalities. And now we have large populations in metros from 4 million up. And just from a practical standpoint, put feelings and ideology aside, from just a logistical, practical implementation standpoint, it doesn't look good. And even if you look at cities across the world, they face very much similar problems, from polluted water systems to homelessness to drugs. They face exactly the same problems across the world, major cities. And we just carry on because it's normal. Oh, it's like this in London. It's like this in New York. So who are we to do anything different? Let's just continue. And I think that is a ridiculous mindset. So I think we need to restructure local government. And I think metro should be smaller. They should be divided into smaller, more manageable zones. Because right now we have major problems. Never mind with how citizens, or should I say residents in the case of local municipality, not being heard by their local government. Local governments themselves are clearly, according to the evidence, if you look at the Auditor General findings, not coping with the workload that they have.
And lastly, it looks like a drone takeover of the city of Cape Town is on the cards.
My favorite topic, I must say. So a lot of people will think, wonderful, finally, we can deal with crime, drones everywhere. But I actually shudder in terror at the thought of any government, doesn't matter who's in charge, doesn't matter which party. It doesn't really matter if the government you consider in charge to be good or not. You shouldn't give government that level of power to surveil citizens, because ultimately that's what's going to happen. It's going to end up in a complete nanny state, a surveillance state, because the whole focus in the article, so the article saying that so since the 1st of April, April Fool's Day, 2026, the drone program has been made official, but it's been going on for 10 years. And there's a goal from the city of Cape Town to increase the amount of drone flights that take place from, I can't remember the original number, but up to 3,000, I think, per year. And this is to, in their words, combat crime. Also, they say that drones can be used to deploy I think like life buoys to help people in distress in water, etc. So I actually just want to zoom out again a little bit on this, because what are we doing? We need to stop as citizens, as people, as human beings on the planet, and just stop for a moment and ask ourselves, what are we doing? Are we really going to outsource all thinking and all skills, action, and responsibility to government? Do we expect government to fix every facet of our existence? Because yes, we have high crime, especially in Cape Town. It seems to be on the increase. Well, as we know, Port Elizabeth is the winner, but Cape Town has a lot of crime, a lot of deaths, a lot of gang violence, a lot of unnecessary deaths. Children die because of gang violence, but then there's also house breakings and all the rest, and hijackings. And so crime is high, can't be denied. And I understand people's desperation to want the government to do something. And SAPS, which is a national government mandate, responsibility, is failing completely. So then people look to local governments or private security companies. And drones seem like an easy and practical solution. But what does it result in? Because the city of Cape Town also wants to fine people or police people for their rainwater tanks and solar panels and how many vegetables they grow and all the rest. So where does it end? So and they've also encouraged SAPS to also adopt these technologies. I do not want to give government that amount of power. And I know a lot of people will think, oh, finally the government's doing something, but no, people, wait a minute. What happens when all this infrastructure and all these technologies are applied from national to provincial to local governments on a national scale in all provinces, in all municipalities? And then what happens? What are you going to do when just ordinary things start to become illegal? When it becomes illegal to eat a certain amount of meat a month because it's bad for the climate change, What happens when it's illegal to homeschool your children? What happens when it becomes illegal to refuse certain medical interventions? What happens then? What happens when normal, sensical, rational things that should be up to you to decide, becomes illegal, but now the government has all the infrastructure to find you, and it becomes impossible for you to resist tyranny, and it becomes impossible for you to not comply, and it becomes impossible for you as a law-abiding human being, and I say law-abiding with trepidation there, becomes impossible for you to run away. So what has happened, this speaks to a much, especially if you support this whole nonsense, with the government having like all-seeing eye in the sky almost. If you support government becoming all-powerful, all-seeing, all-knowing, and all-powerful, if that's what you want, then you are the problem with the country. Because what we need are people to realize that there are two paths. One path is the path of freedom, which requires complete and utter responsibility for your life. You make sure you're safe. You make sure you do what you need to feed yourself and clothe yourself and all the rest and house yourself. And you protect yourself and you get skills to make sure you don't get into trouble. For instance, they're justifying using drones because we can save people who are drowning. No, more people should learn how to swim properly. More people should get first aid training. More people who are good law-abiding citizens should carry firearms and learn how to use them. More people should do what it takes to make sure they are fed, housed, safe, protected. And if we have a citizenry like that, we will have a country that's democratic and free. The alternative is what everyone is doing right now, wanting to give power to government to fix everything. And then what happens? Government becomes all-powerful, all-knowing, all-seeing. And there's no end to what they can or cannot do. And there's no end to how they can destroy your life. So at the core of everything that we've spoken about today, the problem, we are speaking about symptoms of a much broader problem. And I say, I've been advocating for years now that system change is a solution, but there's a deeper problem than that even, and it's our mindset. And we were born into this paradigm, this reality where government and politics is separate to us. It's like this lower thing. We don't want to dirty our hands. We just want comfort and convenience, and we just want to get on with our own lives. And we are paying the price for it. So we need to reach a point where we realize no one's coming to save us. We are our own heroes in the story. And we can either relinquish all power to the government and suffer the consequences for generations to come, or we can carve a different path. And I'm for carving a different path for sure.
Right, I'm with you. That was Lauren Evanthia, the founder of the Organic Humanity Movement, on the NdB Sunday Show with me, Chris Steyn. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Chris.